Hi everyone, this is Esateys.
And this is Rafael, and welcome back to Relationships Done Different. And today's topic is going to be, are your judgments getting the best of your relationship? Esateys and I have been in relationship for many, many years, and I'm embarrassed, or I shouldn't say embarrassed, but I guess I'm just have to say that I have judgments coming up all the time, and it is something that I am constantly working on.
Well, what I'll tell you, Raphael, is that everybody has judgments all the time. And judgments can be determined either as quote unquote good judgments or even quote unquote bad judgments, because a judgment is an opinion, and the opinion is based on whatever you think is right versus what somebody else might think is right. So your judgment is just a thought process that you have about the way you think life should be. And if it doesn't match your belief systems, then everybody else is really messed up.
So, of course, I always think I'm right, and I'm sure most people think they're right or whatever. So what do we do about this? I mean, that just seems like it's normal that we think we're right. We know better.
Well, you think you're right because you want to feel empowered. But when you're willing to recognize that power doesn't come from being right, being the best, being the strongest, being the most whatever, controlling, then you start to realize that being in one of those usurping situations where you're always trying to usurp someone else is not really where joy is. It's not where the value of life is. It doesn't bring you happiness. It gives you the illusion that somehow you have value, because deep in your core, you feel like you aren't valuable. And so what that means is that pretty much everybody is fighting to prove to themselves that they are valued, that they are loved, that they are lovable. And so they fight like crazy to be right. And if you take the right or the wrong out of it and you just acknowledge this is what I am framing this to be like, without it being, and it's the only way, then it's like, okay, so based on what I've learned and how I've grown up in life and what I've decided is quote unquote so from whomever it is that taught me that, this is what I've come up with. What has come up for you in your upbringing, and why is it that you feel that that's accurate for you, without it turning into a debate about whose upbringing was better or go down some other rabbit hole?
I kind of relate this to a control issue. It's like I need to be right. And we did a podcast about this a few weeks ago. Would you rather be right than happy? And I would refer that to everyone to listen to, because the underlying stuff of what we're going to be talking about today, you'll get a really good basis of that. The judgments are really they're there's a word for it. They just come, and it's hard to think that we're wrong.
Well, judgments are a survival mechanism. Judgments are a survival mechanism. That's really important to recognize. And when I say a survival mechanism, what I mean is it is a survival mechanism for the ego. Because the ego feels that if it is not right and it's not on top of things and on top of everyone else, so to speak, then it is diminished in its value, it's diminished in its control, it's diminished in its energy. And as many of you have heard me use the example in other podcasts about which wolf are you feeding? If you are feeding the part that is open and aligned and not fighting, in other words, non-resistive living, then that's the way your life is going to head. If you are spending your time and your energy and all of your effort on fighting to be right, judging to make somebody else feel wrong, because every judgment is about somebody being on top, somebody being below. If you're not so busy trying to make somebody else feel crummy, then you are going to be. So the more you do that, the more you're feeding that part of you, which will grow and demand that life starts to expand that, which it does, and it will, until you lose sight of anything except the human humongous over control of your ego, for lack of a better term.
And to me, when I think of this judgment thing, I always think of two people in the pool. When we were kids, one person would push someone down and that would elevate them. You push someone down, and as you do that, you go up. And that's the way of the ego feeling it's on top, feeling it's surviving, it's in control.
That's very true. So when you notice that you are judging, just boom, immediately recognize that there's some part of you, take a breath for those of you that have to swallow when I speak sometimes, just recognize that you are fighting for control, that in that very moment, some part of you, which you may not be consciously aware of, is feeling threatened, feeling fearful, feeling impotent, not feeling empowered. Because when you feel empowered, you don't have to fight to be right. You don't have to judge somebody else. You reach a place in life where you see people doing what they're doing because that's the best they know in that moment. And you're doing what you're doing because that's the best you know in that moment. And it doesn't mean that one is right and one is wrong. Our society has created this amazing dichotomy of right and wrong. And judgments are all about being in that lane of right and wrong. Because the judgment means something is good or something is bad. Something is right or something is wrong. And if you get to be the good and you get to be the right, then you get to feel like you are pretty darn awesome, when in fact, what happens is somebody else that you're arguing with or putting down feels really badly. And in those moments, people do not remember most of the time that I am you, you are me, and we are one. So when I make you feel bad, I feel bad. You may or may not actually recognize that. I've said that to people and they go, oh no, I feel like so good when somebody else just gets put in their place. Well, on some level, your ego does feel good. But in your heart of hearts, in the core, we really don't like to see people suffer.
What I really like about this whole part of this conversation, and which means so much to me, is that if we can stay cognizant of that there is no right or wrong. Just because I think it doesn't make it right. And that's a really hard concept. And I know in relationship, and this is where I'd like to hone the conversation back, two people are in a relationship. One person thinks they're right, and therefore the other person has to be wrong. How does a couple deal with that? How do you deal with that in any relationship?
Well, it comes back to it's all about you, meaning inside of yourself. Your life is a choice-driven perception. It's a choice-driven perception. And when that is recognized, what occurs is that you have to have a certain level of awareness and you have to have a certain level of desire, which takes me to the program that I've done called AQDQ, Awareness Quotient, Desire Quotient. I highly recommend that to everyone listening because when you listen to that program, you're going to start to really recognize that if you don't have awareness about what's going on in your life, the way you're thinking, the way you're acting, the way you're reacting, the way you're responding, whatever it is that you're doing, the way you think, then there is nothing you're going to be able to do about that because there has to be a certain level of awareness. That awareness can come by somebody else screaming at you or knocking you down or whatever, or it can come from being in a place where you start looking consciously and watching, observing what it is that is occurring and what you're saying. And when that occurs, then you start to develop awareness. Once you have the awareness, then what's a necessity is you have to have a desire to change that. And then every door starts to open to support you in that. But if you are walking around and you don't even know that you are being judgmental, if you don't know and you're not aware that judgment has everything to do with you feeling more masterful and somebody else feeling less, or you feeling more and they feel less, then you're going to just keep on doing it because the ego is so in control. Ego, personality, I'm going to use them interchangeably here. That personality is so excited because it's like on top of the world because it got somebody to look like they were less than them, and when they're less than them, then get the illusion that you are more than them. And yet people aren't happy when they do that. I do not know, and I have never known anyone who had high levels of judgment that were happy. Never. They may not even know that they're not happy, but they're not.
Oh, I have so many things so many comments. I just didn't want to interrupt you. First of all, I just want to give you a little plug. I want to give a plug for the AQDQ program. We just recently were redoing, the program is it's 5 modules. And we have transcripts, and I actually just listened to the whole program again. I mean, I must have listened to it 4 or 5 times. And every time that I listen to it, I get so much more. And it's really important, especially in this context, because if we don't know we're judging, we're going to just keep judging. And then that's going to have ramifications throughout the whole relationship. So the awareness thing that you were just talking about, it is really, really critical. So I just wanted to say that. The second thing that I wanted to say about this whole awareness business is that if we perceive that we're always right, there can never be a meeting of the minds because I'm always right and you're wrong. So in a relationship, there's got to be give and take. There has to be understanding. There has to be compassion. There has to be a mutuality. And if you're not aware that you're not doing that, and you're not having compassion because the other person is doing the best they can, and maybe even, heaven forbid, they're right and you're not, you're sunk if you don't have that basic awareness.
Okay. I loved everything you said until you said, what if they were right? That implies that you're sucking it up so they can feel right, or you're going to bite it because they are, well, whatever, because they are, you're just going to give it up because you surrender to the fact that they're right, which immediately creates the same feeling.
The same dichotomy.
I'll drop on the floor and I'll be the doormat and I'll let them have it this time. That's not it. It's not that. It's recognizing. It's not even about compassion. Ultimately, it's about recognizing that this person has a belief system based on what they grew up learning and knowing and how they've been taught and how they've been programmed. And you have yours based on how you've been programmed. Neither one of them is better than the other. And it's the conflict between the two that causes all the wars, all of the conflict, all of the arguments, all of the pain, all of the suffering, everything that people say they don't want in their life comes from that very thing. So what would happen if Rafael and I, we actually kind of have a difference of opinion about a few things here.
Once in a while.
Yeah. And
I'm, of course, always right. So.
Yeah.
And she thinks she's always right.
And I don't look at it like he's always right. I know that from where it is he comes, he really believes that. But I also know that from where it is that I come, that I believe it is what it is that I believe. And the only difference is that if I recognize that he is coming from the place that he knows, and I'm coming from the place that I know, then we just have to agree to disagree sometimes. And then if there's a decision that needs to be made, black and white, then I win. You know?
Well, yeah, well, that goes without saying.
Well, and it's not even, and I'm kind of being, a jokester here.
We're having a little fun here.
But it has to be, here's one of the things that you can use as a little gauge. If you are with your partner or a partner or somebody, and you're just at a stalemate about what decision is going to be made in which direction, a really powerful thing to do is to stop and look inside yourself and say, okay, I'm not going to let them know I'm thinking this, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this to me really? So let's take something like where we're going to eat. I really want to go to Claim Jumper. Well, I really want to go to the fish house. I want fish. Well, I really want to go to Claim Jumper because I want to have their stuffed baked potato or whatever. So both people are, like digging it in. There's no compromise that seems to be happening. In that moment, you stop and you go inside and ask yourself, okay, honestly, really, truly, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do I feel like I have to? I might die if I don't go to Claim Jumper. And if you come up with
we know where we're going tonight.
between one or 9, then you go, what's the big deal? Let's go to the fish house. And in that moment, your ego is going to come up and say, I'm not letting them have that. No chance, because it's going to look like I, acquiesced, I fell down, I was the doormat, and they got their way, and they win. And that is the piece that you will almost always show up with, because the ego doesn't want to do that either. And yet, it's very important for you to take the moment and decide for yourself. If you are really at a 10 and you just have to go there because your free coupon's going to expire in the next 24 hours and they're discontinuing the potato or whatever it is that you felt you needed to go there for, it's at that moment that you can say to your partner, look, I'm just really, really desiring to go do this. And my request is, if we can go Claim Jumper tonight, how would it feel to you if the next time we go to the fish house, or maybe for 2 times we'll go to the fish house if that'll matter. Whatever it is, the bottom line is you have to negotiate. You have to learn how to drop it and get over it and still feel like both people win.
Okay, I feel like we got a little off topic here because number one, I really didn't want a potato tonight. But beside that, we were where I was coming from in this whole thing is that there, and what I tried to say earlier and didn't probably say it correctly is that there is no right or wrong. There can't be, because it's just 2 different perspectives. So in this case, we're talking about what a preference is and compromise rather than thinking that person's always wrong. So a person can't be wrong because they want to have a potato, but they could be wrong if they think the potato is the most important and essential thing you could eat. So there's a kind of like there's a dichotomy there.
To me, there is no dichotomy, because what I was kind of like hearing is people out there, all of you listening, are thinking, well, this is great. All these words are great, but what in Sam Hill do I do in that moment when they think they're right to get their potato and I know I'm right to get my fish? How do you come up with a solution? Because people are looking for solutions when they come up against this wall and they can't seem to move forward. So theoretically, it's like, oh, well, there is no right, there is no wrong, yippee, yahoo. And yet, there I am still wanting my damn potato. And you're over there with your fish. So we have to find ways to work with that part of us that wants to stay steadfast. You take the right or wrong out of it and you say, okay, neither one of us are right, neither one of us are wrong. What's most important to you? What's most important to me? Because relationship has to do with giving up the battle between right and wrong. Instead, it's more about what can I do to make your life more awesome right now?
Definitely go to the fish place. I totally appreciate that, and I understand that. I I wanted to just swing this around a little and say, when you feel yourself judging, one of the things that I do is I've incorporated one of the processes that you, that is when I catch myself. I've incorporated one of the processes which I'd like you to share with us about deleting the program that's leading us to making the judgment. Okay, you know what I'm referring to, right?
You're talking about just saying delete the program?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so one of the things that you can do when you find yourself just digging in and saying that basically the other person's wrong and I'm right, you can, to give yourself the empowerment of being the master in the moment, you could just say, you know what, this is just a program. Delete this program. Delete this program, because when you reach the place where you really get that your thought processes are recycled ignorance that come from a program that you learned and you thought about it over and over and you enacted it over and over and you heard it reiterated from other people over and over, you have become so entrained and so habituated to that you don't know that there's any possibility except that one thing. And people die by the gazillion, well, maybe not by the gazillion, but certainly by the hundreds or thousands all the time. Every war is like that.
It's like we're on autopilot and we don't even know it, and we're not even aware that we're on autopilot.
That's why I say that the good majority of the planet is asleep. That's why we do what it is that we do, which is why you are listening, because there's a part of you that wants to step out of the box. This is out of the box thinking. I didn't say it was easy. I didn't say that this was something that came along and that boom, in a nanosecond, it's going to be all done and all better and that the world is going to be a different place. But I can tell you that if more and more people started putting down their arms, so to speak, and I don't mean your 5 fingers with arms, but your battle gear about being right and your judgments, then you'll find that other people around you will feel safer to do that too, because they won't feel like they're in battle with you every time they have a conversation with you. And when somebody doesn't feel like they have to be defensive, then they don't have to be right either. And the more and more people that do that, the more empowered each person becomes. And that's how we change the world, a little bit at a time. And there's going to be people that probably will never get it, or it will be a very long time before they do. But they're not your concern. Your concern, my precious friends that are listening, is to be in touch with what is important to you. It's important that you decide whether you want to be happy, sad, mad, or glad. Do you want to fight for your limitations? Or do you want to make a decision that you don't have to be right, you don't have to judge, you decide that you choose happy over being right? And it's a challenge. It's a challenge sometimes until you start to recognize that there is no value in being right except for the ego.
I just want to come back to how you started this show and just to reiterate, like you were saying, that if we're judging, we're judging, A, we're judging ourselves, and B, it's just reinforcing the unhappiness that we have within us. And I don't think that's where anybody wants to live. That's why we say happiness is a choice. It's your choice. It's your choice in every moment, with every thought, with everything you say, and how you react to any particular thing that your partner does.
And your choice is going to be based on your perception. If you perceive something a certain way, you will make a decision, a choice based on that perception. If you see it from a different perception, you will make your choice based on that perception. That's why the perception is so critical, and your perception is changed by understanding the mechanics of the way the universe works, by understanding the mechanics and the systemization of how the ego and personality are put together. When you understand a polarity-based system like we have here on Earth, then everything changes. And that's what I am most excited about supporting people in doing, and that is to better understand the way the planet works, the way the energy works, the way we work, the way the ego works, how the personality is responsive and reactive. All of these things are foundational information centers that are within us that as you hear me speak and you discover on your own that there's a whole nother way of viewing life, then voila, you can actually feel good, and you don't have to be in a constant state of battle first with yourself. Because if you're not in battle with your internal conflicts, you won't be in battle with your external.
So you basically get to be happy both ways once you get there. Giving, and then it comes back to just giving. The more you give to someone, the more you give to your partner, the more it makes you happy, it makes them happy. It's a give and take of energy.
And giving doesn't happen by, okay, I'm going to go do this because they're going to be indebted to me, or they're going to owe me, or they're going to feel, really good and they're going to love me more. Those are underlying, most of the time, reasons that people give. It's not what we're speaking about. We're talking about being so ensconced, so filled with your own sense of self, of joy, of happiness, of whatever your word is, connection, that you are so full, it just overflows. It's just like you're just constantly in a state of giving. And, maybe this sounds like pie in the sky to you, depending upon how your day is going in these 10 seconds. And I will tell you that it's doable, it's achievable, it's something that you can definitely have. And I will also tell you that you have to stay steadfast on wanting that more than you want to stay right in your state of judgment.
Wow, this has been this. I don't know where the time went. We just got into this conversation and it's just flown by. Very, very awesome. Well, we're going to take a break right now and we will be right back shortly. And we have a really cool question that we received. And here's the question that we received from Ron from New Jersey. He said, I listened to your show last week on uncovering and looking at one's programs. We talked about the backpack. And I really did a lot of contemplation around that. I wanted to know how, if these programs are so entrenched and deep, that I can really break free of them. Wax on, wax off, with a big question mark. Thanks for that question, Ron.
I thought that wax on, wax off was something you were adding to it. That was actually in the question?
Yep.
Alrighty then. Well, see, this person's really smart. So, Rob, what it is, it's Rob, right? R-O-B?
It's Ron.
Ron, okay, sorry. So, Ron, this is where the consistency to make change is a necessity. First of all, as I said earlier, you have to have awareness, you have to have desire. Well, you also have to have so much desire that you will do whatever it takes. That means when it doesn't seem like it's working, you stay consistent. When you feel like, is this ever going to change? This is when you follow through. It is going to take a persistence and a willingness to keep on walking through the swamp sometimes to get where it is that you want to go. So do not be discouraged, or you can be discouraged, but that doesn't mean that you stop. You never ever let the fear stop you. You never ever let your impatience stop you. You remember that for as many years as you are old, and depending upon your belief system, as many lifetimes that you may have been thinking and feeling and expressing and being this way. And you expect because you hear something in 20 minutes or 10 podcasts later that your life is going to be, oh, yippee. Well, it's possible. I do want to say that. And I will also say that because of the energy and the evolutionary process that we are in right now, everything is accelerating. So the energy is so much more profound that it actually makes us have a much easier time in shifting. And when you're around people of a much higher vibration, or you're listening to people on books or this podcast, or you're coming to like the meetups that we do, or you come to a retreat, or you do coaching, and you surround yourself with people that are really, really committed like you are, and you really remove yourself from the environment and from the friendship circle that may not be uplifting, it will get easier and easier and easier. So follow the basic principles. Listen to these podcasts over and over again. Get some of our programs and hear them for two reasons. One is it's going to give you intellectual understanding, which is really important, what I spoke about earlier today, but it's also going to give you a chance to be thinking from a higher viewpoint, because when you hang out with people with a higher viewpoint, it's a lot easier for you to think in a higher viewpoint. If you're on the streets in a gang doing meth and killing people from your gang group, it's a different vibration. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not right, it's not wrong, but it's a different vibration than the things that we're speaking about today. You get to make a decision. And if they're just by some wild stretch of the imagination, anybody who's listening to this that happens to be in a game of gangs and meth or any of that kind of stuff, then just keep coming back to the podcast and start to divest yourself from things, including toxic relationships. For those of you who maybe aren't doing meth, but you just might be in a toxic relationship, those are relationships that will make it extremely challenging for you to step above the fold and live your life differently, especially with ease.
That's cool. I wanted to just add, and we did a meetup last night. We do a meetup every Tuesday called Relationships 911 here in Portland, and one of the things that we were talking about yesterday, which fits right into this question, is that our vibration, our state of well-being, our, how happy we are, our, what do you call it? Our state of well-being. Another word for vibration. You
frequency.
Well, not just our frequency, but
good humor.
Our good humor, those kind of things. They come and they go. So one moment you could be at a 10, you could be really happy, and you could be seeing things and really able to understand, and then 5 minutes later, a trigger or anything, so many energetic factors could take you to another place, so that you would basically see everything from a different place 10 minutes later. It's almost like, well, just wait a few minutes and things will change. I used to live in Syracuse, and they used to say, just wait a minute and the weather will change. Well, it's the same thing. When our vibration changes, that we can't expect to have a linear growth rate. We can't expect to have a linear path of being happy. It's going to go up and it's going to go down. And the thing that we're talking about, by repetition, by being in this frequency, by being around these thoughts, is that each low becomes higher and higher, so that you keep elevating your perspective rather than decreasing it. And not to be disheartened by the fact that maybe 1 minute you seem to have regressed. Well, that's life. There's ups and there's downs. It's what you say is life just happens.
Yeah, and the key is that you do not give up or beat yourself up, because that'll just lower your vibration more. Instead, just go, oh, New moment, new universe, new opportunity. And you just keep going.
So the only thing to do is just keep listening to our podcast. Get some of our programs, because I think you'll really enjoy that. And it really, really works. We tell everyone to stay in the energy as much as possible, and to stay among people, like-minded people who have a higher outlook, who will elevate you. Okay, whew. God, I feel like I've been racing here. This has been so exciting. I really enjoyed this. Esateys, what's our question for the day?
Okay, our question for today, which I support you in taking these questions and asking them every day until you come back and listen to the next podcast next week. Because if you really put this out there for a whole week at a time, it gives that part of your brain a chance to run out like the little Google engine that it is and bring you all kinds of contemplative ideas. The question today is, what is the value of me judging in my relationships? What is the value of me judging in my relationships? Do your very best to not try to think up things, but rather just ask it rhetorically. Don't think about it again. And certain things occur in people's lives every time when this comes up. And from there, you are able to have a place where you're seeing things differently and you can make different choices. So the question, one more time, write it down. What is the value of me judging in my relationships?
Very powerful. One more thing I wanted to add is, I recommend, if this podcast has been meaningful to you, invite your partner to listen to this with or without you, and that will help open up the flow between the two of you to break any habits or any hard encrusted habits that either one of you may not be aware of. So just sharing this with your partner would be really powerful. And more importantly, or as importantly, share it with your friends, Facebook, and let them know the value that you're getting from these.
And write comments. Write comments below, or I don't know, do they give stars or something for these things? Like them, or I don't know what to do.
On our blog, which has the podcast, you can leave a comment, and it's esateys.com/podcast. And right below each episode, you can leave a comment, and we will certainly respond to it. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what you're thinking, and we'd love to hear what you'd like and what you don't like.
Okay.
So only the good things, forget the complaints, right?
No, you can complain. You can make your comments. We don't want anything nasty, because that's not a good vibration that we choose to be around. But certainly, if you have things that you would like to hear, or you have some constructive ideas, we're always open, because we're here in service to you. So just let us know what you need, what you want, and what's important to you in your life. So everyone, this is Esateys signing off.
And this is Rafael. You guys have a great week, and we will see you next week.
Feel a hug, and remember that I am you, you are me, and we are one.
Isn't that incredible?
Therefore, we will never judge ourselves, and therefore, we will never have a judgment about anyone else.
Because if we're going to judge someone else, we're just judging ourselves.
That's a true statement.
Why do that?
Okay. Bye for now, you guys.
Goodbye, everybody. See you next week.